President-elect Trump just announced Susie Wiles will serve as White House Chief of Staff. You might remember her from this moment during Trump's victory speech when he alluded to her nickname, the Icy Maiden.
Let me also express my tremendous appreciation for Susie and Chris, the job you did. Susie, come here. Come here, Susie. Chris, come here, Chris. Susie likes to stay sort of in the back, let me tell you. The Ice Maiden, we call her the Ice Maiden.
And you could see him ask her, do you want to say anything? And she shook her head. That is Susie Wiles in a nutshell. She will be the first female White House Chief of Staff in American history and was one of, some would argue, the definitive mastermind in Trump's 2024 campaign. There is Eric Trump with Chris LaCivita. With that, we welcome you to the Ferris Network on television. And first tonight, $7 butter. If you're at home and you know butter costs $7, that's all you need to know to understand why Donald Trump won. If you don't know butter cost $7, you probably thought calling Donald Trump a fascist would work. Here's Joe Biden's favorite television anchor to explain.
3 weeks ago, somebody who was going to be voting for Kamala Harris came up to me and said, oh, my God, Trump's going to win. I go, why is that? He goes, I went to the grocery store. Butter's over $3. What everything we're hearing after the election is
I'm just saying, is the $7.
What's that? Butter is $7?
Yeah.
What? Is it framed in gold?
No, it's not framed in gold. It's $7. That's one of the many reasons why telling everyone that Trump is Hitler 2.0 didn't work. In this election, Democrats learned an important lesson. Trump supporters aren't just a bunch of Proud Boys. Those are the ultra-nationalist, whatever you want to call them, far-right loons. The economic pain of inflation over the past 3 years that brought us $7 butter exploded the number of paycheck-to-paycheck voters. That financial pain has hit everyone, regardless of race, sex, education, and class. Don't believe me? Just look at the shift in margins towards Trump from 2020 in historically blue states. 12% in California, 11% shift in New York, 8% in Massachusetts, 25% shift in the city of Chicago. The list goes on. Here's Frank Luntz and Batyan Sargon from last night.
It doesn't matter what your ethnicity is. It doesn't matter what your gender is. If you're a paycheck-to-paycheck voter struggling every week or every month, you are more likely to consider and to actually vote for Donald Trump.
I think it is a diploma divide. The Democrats over the last 60 years created an economy that was an upward funnel, an upward transfer of wealth from working class Americans, people who work with their hands for a living, people who are employed full time but don't have a diploma, don't have that degree, into the pockets of the elites.
So Democrats, it's very clear, right now face an existential identity crisis because they're realizing that being against Donald Trump is not enough. So what are they for? Even after losing in a landslide, and there's no other way to look at this election than to call it a landslide, the thought leaders of the Democratic Party don't truly understand why they lost. In fact, most of them say it's you, the voters' fault.
And the hardest thing is that I look across this country and tens of millions of people fell for this. And it's depressing.
What will the future hold now that America has just decided that we're going to F around and find out?
There are, let's say, peers in history of mass movements of people that mobilize to protect one another in times of fascism and authoritarianism. And this is the era that we are poised to enter.
Everybody goes through grief in different ways at different times. Live pictures of Mar-a-Lago right there. To be fair, though, the response might just be burning off steam. But MSNBC's Rachel Maddow made a different argument. Maddow is exceptionally bright. I watch her most nights that I can. And there's reasons that her ratings are so high and she's paid so much. She made a different argument than the one you just heard of blowing off steam, and that one left us scratching our heads.
Let's let democracy go. Let's put in an all-powerful guy instead, see how it goes. There are many more countries in the world governed by that kind of a system than there are governed by ours. We are the only 248-year-old multiracial, pluralistic democracy in the world. And shall we keep it? A lot of our fellow Americans say we shouldn't.
What Maddow just doesn't get is that tens of millions of Americans didn't vote for Donald Trump because they want a strong man, or that they want to destroy a 248-year-old multiracial pluralistic democracy. I practiced that a couple of times, actually. Had to get it right. They voted for Donald Trump for one simple reason: $7 butter. Begin tonight with Philippe Reines, former senior advisor to Hillary Clinton. It's good to see you, my friend. Thank you. You, in many ways, are a messaging guy. Is it time for Democrats to give up the idea that they can beat Donald Trump by telling voters over and over again how awful he is?
Well, I want to unpack it because there was a lot going on in the previous packages. I'm going to start with saying Susie Wiles should demand a better nickname, but congratulations to her for being the first woman chief of staff. It's overdue. I would say,
should we congratulate Donald Trump for appointing the first woman chief of staff?
We lost. Okay, we lost. I'm going to start with the fact that in terms of recognizing why something happens is to admit losing, which Kamala Harris did inside of about 12 hours, which Donald Trump has not done for 4 years. So let me just get that out of my system. There's a lot to look at here. Donald Trump won decisively. The people spoke, the people even hollered. But this conflation between the extremes of names he's being called and everything being hunky-dory is very odd to me. I know you well enough to know that this is not, you don't think everything he does is great. You might not think it's the end of the world, but everyone who looks at Donald Trump, even people who support him, say, I wish he went about it a little differently. And, you know, people are allowed to feel threatened by him. If, you know, when you say there are good people on both sides of something, that's not funny, you know, and his people will say for years, that's not what he said. It is what he said. We saw it. We heard it.
Except the Nazis. Even come on. Even Snopes debunked it. Hold on. I think you're onto something important.
7 years later.
You're onto something. Okay, hold on. You're onto something important here. Don't mess it up by going back to Charlottesville. What you're onto is that there is a lot of Americans who have real problems with how Donald Trump acts. And then there's a lot of people who, despite those problems, and despite really not liking how he acts, and despite probably voting against him in the primary and supporting Nikki Haley, a lot of them, they voted for him. And that is what my question is. How do you explain those people?
I get it, that why he won in 2016. I also get why he lost in 2020, which gets glossed over. And I get why he won this year. The things that people like about him, whether it's how he wants to deal with the economy or how he wants to deal with immigration, that makes sense. There are things he says about immigration that people I know, including myself, agree with. You don't have to talk about shooting Dick Cheney's daughter in the face. And I don't want to litigate whether he said it or not. It's a stupid thing to say. You just don't get that close.
By the way, Flip, I know you don't watch the program every day. We did an entire A1, our lead story and monologue about how dumb that was.
I'm not chastising you. If anything, I'm chastising my Twitter feed. But the fact of the matter is that
that's a weird place to live in, man. Come on.
I'm going to give it up. But here's the thing: the right, or whatever you want to call this 80 million, 72 million, whatever it is, they resented the hell out of being portrayed as a caricature for 4 years as being racist, as being extremist. Now, what's going to happen right now is the same exact thing. Every Democrat is going to be for transgender sexual changes on every street corner. We're going to be for $100 butter. These things we can't go caricature for caricature. And that's what happened for 4 years.
Okay, so let's not relitigate Donald Trump's campaign. Let's litigate what Democrats are going to do. And the question is, do Democrats double down and embrace Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris for the next 4 years? Or do they say, hey, our front man needs to be Andy Beshear, popular Democratic governor of Kentucky that Donald Trump won by 20 points? Where is the Andy Beshear Democrats to take the mantle and to pick up Humpty Dumpty and put it back together of the Democratic Party, or the Humpty Dumpty donkey?
Look, Donald Trump is a once-in-a-generation phenomenon. That's the best way I can put it. We will not be facing him in 4 years. Hopefully he will realize that he has to stop and leave. So it's a matter of facing most likely J.D. Vance. Now, the number one, let's be clear about something. The number one issue is what you pointed out is butter. Okay, people don't want to be paying whatever the price is of butter when it's normal versus $7, or preferred, as Donald Trump would cite, bacon. All right, if the economy was better now, if people weren't still feeling inflation, then I don't know that he would have won. He's not infallible. I know you jump every time I say 2020, but he lost for reasons. And the reasons
I never said that he lost badly, and for a lot of real reasons. I would argue the reason he lost was twofold. One, there were a lot of people who actually felt good about the economy. Two, he ran a terrible campaign. Three, people were tired of the chaos and the mean tweets. Four, Joe Biden was able to run from the basement. He didn't have to define himself. He could be anything other than Donald Trump. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons he lost.
So I think, it's hard to say. We have a lot of talent. I know that's not what you're looking for, but we have a lot of talent. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to run, which is probably for the best. They'll have a very robust primary, whether it's Gavin Newsom, whether it's the vice president again, whether it's Andy Beshear, whether it's Mitch Landrieu, whether it's someone who's never held public office. I mean, it's funny that that's not something that's being discussed.
I think Mark Cuban's chances have ended.
Well, thankfully,
just putting that out there. Okay, but I'm going to give you the last word, but I want to ask, because 2020 is an important point. The question is, 2020, the Democratic primary was like the DEI Olympics, right? It was who could run to the left hardest, fastest. Free health care for illegal immigrants. No, I'm going to raise you free transgender surgeries for illegal immigrants. No, I'm going to raise you. It shouldn't even be a crime to cross the border. That was the debates. Does the Democratic Party, if they want to win this time around, have to re-embrace the issues that matter to the working class, which is meaningful immigration? And this is not my words, this is Batyangar Sargon, who we had on last night. Meaningful immigration, and I'm going to remember what she said. Number two, trade policy that helps the American worker and fights the American worker, and traditional moderate social values.
100%. The left is killing us. I can't be any more direct than that. First of all, they're not representative of the bulk of the party any more than the extreme parts of the Republican Party are representative of the whole. The problem is that we are not the caricature that we have been portrayed writ large. And that's a messaging, to go back to your first comment about, what I supposedly do. That's a messaging issue. It's very tough. Most Democrats don't believe in the things that you're talking about. I mean, some of these are 80-20 issues that the entire country overwhelmingly supports. But, the Bernie Sanders of the world, they ran. They ran twice. They lost twice. Definitively, it was very clear what we chose in Joe Biden. Okay? In an ideal world, he would have been 60 and not 70, whatever, but he was. We were in a very peculiar situation.
I'm pretty sure he's 80 right now.
Right, I'm thinking back when we nominated him, it would be better if he was 60. The vice president put together an incredible campaign on short notice, and I think put our best foot forward. And we have to do two things. One is the actual substance of it is to not let the extremes of our party that represent a very small part of it pull us to these crazy areas where we are portrayed as wanting crazy things. We don't. People don't want. I mean, I don't think
that's number one. Give me number two, and I got to run.
Well, I mean, number two is this stuff, I would say just in a broader way, I was wrong about who would win. I want to talk to you again over the years and say that I'm wrong again about the fears that I and tens of millions and basically half the country have. And that's up to Donald Trump.
Okay.
We'll see what he does.
Fair.
And I don't have a whole lot of hopes, but I think
that's fair.
But I think everyone needs to respect the fear and the anxiety because the president's words are very powerful. People are looking for license, so he has to go.
Do people also though need to respect the reasons why now the majority of America, he won the popular vote? Should Democrats respect at least the message the majority of the voters sent?
After every election, people should respect the opinions of the winning side the same way as the winner should respect the losing side. And Donald Trump has now been on both sides of that. And I could do the thing and say we're all guilty of that. But you know what? Donald Trump supporters are 10 times more guilty of dismissing us as just these crazoids, because it's not even based on anything.
I won't relitigate that, but Philippe, this was a lot of fun. I want to tell you, I'm going to get the last word now because I got a one, but I want to say thank you over this election cycle for being willing to talk to us and providing really a fresh and meaningful and unvarnished perspective. We appreciate it.
We're all trying to get to the same place.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We'll see you soon and love the same country.
Bye. Thank you.
Biden bragged he left Trump with the strongest economy in the world and promises to finish the job in the last 74 days. Why are we showing you this video? What will America's enemies do in the last 74 days of Joe Biden's presidency? Months into his presidency, Donald Trump launched strikes on Syria from Mar-a-Lago. Live pictures of Mar-a-Lago right now. The attack on Syria's chemical weapons facilities brought about a new era in American foreign policy. And when he takes office in a few months, President Trump will become a wartime president on day one. We've been telling you that for a while. The war between Israel, Iran, and its militias around the Middle East is one bad hookah away from involving the United States. China continues to saber rattle and is reportedly looking for an opportunity to invade Taiwan. And new reports from Ukraine say North Korea fighters are already on the ground, possibly even the front lines, to help Russia. President Trump promises he will end the war in Ukraine before his inauguration.
And Biden has done nothing about it. He hasn't even spoken to Putin in over a year. Know nothing about it. And this is a war that has to end, and we're going to get that war ended. I'm going to try, and I think I can, get it ended as president-elect. In other words, before I even take over the White House.
With us now, member of the House Armed Services, Foreign Affairs and Intelligence Committees, author of Hard Truths, Think and Lead Like a Green Beret, Florida Congressman Michael Waltz. I have read parts of the book. Going to finish it after the election craziness. Excellent. I would recommend it to anybody. From the now president-elect. In other words, before I enter the White House, I'm a simple guy. Simple questions. How?
Yeah, Leland, thanks for mentioning the book. By the way, all my proceeds go to a Gold Star family and their foundation. So get some for Christmas. It's a different way of thinking that Green Berets have to undertake. It's not just lightning raids in the middle of the night. We embed with villages, tribes. We herd them along in line with America's interests, and how I apply that to herding the tribes of the swamp. And speaking of, look, underscoring, I think, a second Trump term will be energy policy. And the fact is that the sanctions haven't been enforced on Russia. They're selling more oil and gas through China and India than they ever did even before the war. Their war machine is flush with cash. President Trump is, I think, going to get him to the table very quickly because if he enforces those sanctions, the old adage, Russia is a little more than a gas station with nukes, absolutely holds true. So focusing on getting a ceasefire, focusing on getting those two to the table, everybody, I think, ultimately agrees that this will ultimately have some type of diplomatic solution. It's just how quickly can we drive it, and President Trump knows how to drive a deal.
Well, look, okay, it was Jake Sullivan, now the outgoing national security advisor, who added in winning the war in Ukraine and securing Ukraine's territorial integrity that has this thing still going 3 years later. Almost every war ends with some kind of diplomatic solution. But the solution, and what I'm hearing you say,
and by the way, Leland, but every one of these wars could be changed for the positive by unleashing American oil and gas. Lift the LNG ban. Don't cancel things like the Keystone XL pipeline. Not only do you affect Russia's war machine, you affect Iran's war machine as well. The House passed sanctions on Chinese buyers of Iranian oil. Schumer sat on them for a year. President Trump's going to look at China and say, if you want to continue to buy from us, you can't buy from them. And Russia, too, for that matter. So how things get transported, how things move, the cost of energy is a huge leverage point for the United States that can affect all of these conflicts. And President Trump knows how to use it. And it has been a fundamental flaw of the Biden-Harris administration.
Look, we've been, I think, fairly critical, probably some of the most critical on television of the Biden-Harris foreign policy, just because of what the results have been around the world. That said, Vladimir Putin, just because there are sanctions and there's economic pain for him, economically he's doing better than he's ever been doing. But if there is sanctions, he is not going to immediately withdraw all of his tanks and all of his troops back to the line that he went over in 2014 when I was there with little green men. He's going to want something. You're going to have to give him a win. What will President Trump, and what should he, I guess would be the better question, say to Vladimir Putin? Look, here's the deal. I'm going to give you what in Ukraine in order to end this?
Well, look, President Trump's been very clear. He's actually articulated this. He could go, he could. And again, I don't want to get ahead of him in any way, but hypothetically, tell Putin, we're going to continue to provide arms. All day long, and likewise have that leverage on Zelensky. But the point is, get them both to the table. And we have to ask ourselves, this is the other thing that Biden couldn't or wouldn't define, is it in America's critical national interest for no matter how long it takes, how much it costs, or how many people die to have every Russian off of every inch of Ukraine, including Crimea? Those are the fundamental questions we have to ask ourselves. We have the leverage points to drive them to the table, but the Biden-Harris administration just hasn't used it. Okay. And as long as it takes is a slogan, not a strategy.
Could go all show about this in foreign policy. You are a congressman from Florida, first and foremost. Somehow Donald Trump has managed to unite Republicans in Florida, including Jeb Bush of all people, who praised Susie Wiles as the Trump chief of staff pick. You were at Mar-a-Lago for the party. I'll give you the last 30 seconds. This surprise you? What does she bring?
It doesn't surprise me at all. She is an absolute pro, cool, calm, steady, handles a lot of egos and a lot of folks who have very strong opinions on which way the country should go. And I am proud to have known her for quite some time. She really got her start in Jacksonville, Florida, my hometown.
Yeah, I keep watching the video of her right there where she walks up to the podium and Donald Trump asks if she wants to talk and she says no and steps away. Yeah, well,
that says it all.
Yeah,
right.
Says it all.
It really did. That's Susie right there.
All right, Congressman. Good to see you, sir. Thank you very much. We'll check in with you in D.C. All eyes to Mar-a-Lago, right, as President-elect Trump begins to put together a team that will look next to nothing like the team he entered the White House with in 2017. The real discussions inside Mar-a-Lago about who will lead the country when we come back. Breaking news from the top of the hour. This is going to happen an awful lot. Breaking news out of Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump has made his first big announcement for his transition team. His campaign co-chair, Susie Wiles, will be his White House chief of staff come January. Again, over the next 3-4 weeks and then after Christmas, there is going to be an enormous amount of news out of Mar-a-Lago on the Trump cabinet. Wiles will become the first female White House chief of staff in history, widely credited with running the most disciplined Trump campaign to date. It's a good start because many of the things Trump touches come with a heavy dose of chaos, drama. His transition team includes billionaire investor Howard Lutnick and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Oil and water have more in common. Not even 24 hours after Trump's win, both Lutnick and Kennedy have had cable news interviews where they air their dirty laundry over roles in the administration.
But so vaccines don't cause autism, which is what RFK pushes, which is why people are concerned that he could get a job like HHS. And I don't even think he could
getting a job for HHS. Clearing out the corruption in your terms, would that mean clearing out the top level federal service workers that are currently at the FDA and the CDC?
In some categories, I would say.
What does that look like? Yeah.
In some categories of workers, there are entire departments, like the nutrition departments at FDA, that have to go.
Well, that doesn't exactly clear much up. Now, does it? Welcome back. Deja vu of 2016, 2017. Radio talk show host Hugh Hewitt is with us. Hugh, you and I just look exactly the same age we did in 2016. I would just like to put that out there. But before we get into the Trump cabinet and sort of the drama and chaos that always surrounds Trump, Susie Wiles picked as chief of staff, first female chief of staff. When Joe Biden became president, it was the intersectional Olympics. And there was a lot of praise on Joe Biden for picking the first black, lesbian, whatever, to have whatever job, the first male this, the first transsexual that, on and on and on. Fine. Is Trump going to get credit for choosing the first woman chief of staff at the White House?
Well, he should, Leland, but he won't, not from legacy media. I do not know Ms. Wiles. I've only spoken to her a couple of times, but I do know that the reaction, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, Rick Scott, three very different kinds of Republicans, all say she's the wizard and an extraordinary operator and organizer and a wonderfully wise and prudent counselor. So I think that is a fine first choice. But you are right about transition games and the great fun that the Beltway has with them. And I was here during the transition from Reagan to Bush. I was serving as the acting director of OPM way long ago in 1988, leaving for California, packing up. And it's a leak a day and a name a day and a rumor an hour and an announcement a minute when you get close to the end. I would just caution everyone, wait for Ms. Wiles, or more importantly, wait for the president-elect to say something, because I don't believe anything until either one of those two say it.
Yeah, it's funny, and you get way more than I do, just because of how deeply sourced you are and how long you've been doing this, as you pointed out. But it's funny when you are getting text threads of everyone saying, oh, I know it's this person for the same job. And you've heard from other people inside the campaign, it's absolutely not either one of them. So much of it is they want to create this echo chamber. We had Peter Navarro, one of the more controversial figures of the first Trump administration, on last night. Take a listen.
What separates him is three things. It's American manufacturing here on domestic soil, benefiting black, brown, and blue-collar Americans. It's secure borders for both economic and national security. And it's an end to endless wars. And that's all MAGA.
All right. I got 1, 2, and 3, Peter.
That's not crazy stuff.
Okay. Fair no. You got through 1, 2, and 3. I hear you. So Navarro wants to sort of make it that, MAGA is not crazy. But there are crazy parts of MAGA. Where is this breakdown going to come between, if you want to say, the normie Trump supporters and then the really hardcore burn Washington down, Donald Trump, Mar-a-Lago kitchen cabinet loyalists? Do any of those get cabinet jobs?
I don't know, Leland. I want to say about Peter, he's a friend of mine for 40 years. We went to Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young concerts back when he was a Democrat running for Congress, campaigning with Hillary Clinton in San Diego County in the 90s. There is a big tent around President-elect Trump, and he is open to anyone who brings a good idea and a lot of energy to the task. He has said great things about people who are not Republicans, who are not part of the Republican establishment, not a rhino, not a conservative, not a Reaganite. Just, Peter Navarro is a Democrat. He brings in people from Wall Street. He brought in a group of people in the first term, including Secretary Mnuchin from L.A., and I think the secretary was at the time a Democrat. He tapped Robert O'Brien to be his national security advisor. He grabbed Mike Pompeo out of the Congress, and very few people knew Mike Pompeo at the time that he tapped him to run the CIA. He is a developer. Developers look for talent. Developers look for people who can go from point A to point Z and not bother them in between. So I think he's open literally to anyone who will help the country move forward. And there are going to be very few rules about who's going to be in or out of that, just like the first term. And it's wonderfully entertaining to watch. It will be, I think, very good for the country to get up off the ground, get its energy back, get its mojo back. Most importantly, I love having Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and the entrepreneurs from Silicon Valley actually rowing with the White House towards a new generation of productivity, because the only way to bring down prices is to produce more energy and more productivity and more ideas and more jobs. That's what he's all about. And I think he's always been about that.
He's also quite transactional, right? And he always has been. Here he is, West Palm Beach, Florida, about Elon Musk. Take a listen.
Everybody up here is great. Everybody up here is very special. But the Trump... Who did you say? Oh, let me tell you, we have a new star. A star is born, Elon.
Yes, wildly successful. Yes, the story Trump told during the victory speech of the rocket coming down and Elon's SpaceX catching the rocket, riveting. It was a little odd at 2:30 in the morning during a victory speech. But is there a little too much, I don't want to say faith, but all of a sudden the MAGA world went from hating Elon Musk and making fun of him from electric cars to now viewing him as their savior? This is a business guy. Do you not live by the sword, die by the sword in a situation like this?
I don't think you put too much faith in Elon Musk. I don't know him, but the chopstick thing was the most inspiring scientific feat I have witnessed since the rockets took off in my youth in the Apollo program. What I want to note about the president talking about Elon Musk as a genius at 2:30 in the morning, I would like to see one metric, Leland, one metric. The number of minutes spent being interviewed by President Trump and Vice President candidate now-elect Vance versus those by Vice President Harris and Governor Walz. I will bet you, I don't know, that Donald Trump spent more time talking to Joe Rogan than Vice President Harris spent total talking to any interviewer. And I think he believes, rightly, that the more you communicate, the better off you are. And this is a new era, and Elon Musk likes to communicate. J.D. Vance is incredibly fluent on his feet, and in the debate, he just crushed it. I hope we're into an era where the president and the vice president and the people of the cabinet and the members of the White House talk to people like you and me all the time, because the American people deserve it, they like it, and it increases their confidence in the transparency of government.
Look, I remember when Donald Trump would spend so long on the South Lawn waiting to walk out to Marine One that the decoy helicopters above had to go refuel. And then they would come back and he was still talking. So the Secret Service didn't like it much, but the press loved it. All right, Hugh, we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Leland.
Yeah, liberal women say Trump's victory is proof America is a stewing cauldron of toxic masculinity. Remember the Pink Hat March? That was Oakland, California. There was one in Washington, too. I was at it. These folks are the most vocal. What the majority of women really said last night.
Period. We have had an enormous setback in this election because the fascist won a lot of working class support, which has happened before in history, and we can talk about that. This is going to be a very scary time, and again, I cannot emphasize how important it is that we, as an aligned people, be very cautious about attacking one another.
It's clear the Democratic grief journey over losing is in various stages. But one thing is increasingly clear. They radically misjudged what women, because women are not a monolithic group, care about. A point Megyn Kelly and I talked about last night. Chris Steyerwald, always points out that there is not a gender gap, there is a marriage gap. Married women, 51-48 Trump. Unmarried women, Trump 38, Harris 59. Massive spread in terms of who won the married versus unmarried women vote. Is that what Democrats didn't understand, is that for married women, mostly who will have children, that there were issues like immigration and the threat to their families, the price of groceries, their kids in libraries and what they're reading, their girls in sports, their boys and what they can say in class that were more important than abortion?
Absolutely right, Leland. Well said. And I think, the boys' point has been so upsetting to me personally in that I have a girl. I have a daughter who's in girls' sports. She's only 13, and I have two boys too. And I do not believe that her rights in elevating her and empowering her must come at the expense of my boys.
With us now, Caroline Downey, staff writer at National Review, Carly Cooperman, Democratic pollster and strategist. Nice to see you both. Welcome, ladies. Thank you. Carly, did Democrats overestimate what and the effect abortion at all, reproductive rights, would have on driving the married female vote?
I think we know that abortion rights is important to women, but in this election for women voters, just like the electorate overall, the cost of living was the most important issue to these women. We saw that in poll after poll, and we saw it in the exit polls looking at the data that came out of the election too. And so while abortion rights is important to these women, at the end of the day, Kamala Harris was able to make inroads on the deficit that she had against Trump in terms of who was going to address the economy more. But the entire time, Trump has led on who is trusted more on the economy. And this is what drove women to not give Harris enough of a victory to actually win this election for her. She was up by 7 points, but it wasn't as much as Biden won women in 2020.
Caroline, is there a shift back towards traditional values for a certain group of women who may have been anti-Trump in 2017, didn't necessarily like the mean tweets, but now for some reason are more willing to go in on the MAGA agenda?
Well, we know that Trump made significant inroads actually with Gen Z women. He gained them by 7%. Why? And Kamala Harris lost them by 7%. Why? I think it's because despite the college campus indoctrination chamber, despite abortion looming very large, when you ask, culture podcasters like Call Her Daddy's Alex Cooper, I think a lot of these women are very unhappy, and the mental health data backs that up, Leland. And so the natural conclusion is that whatever progressives are telling young women isn't working. And so I think that's why we saw some Gen Z women defect from Kamala Harris, whereas even Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton had more women than Kamala Harris this time around. And that really tells you something, because they're blaming the boogeymen once again of misogyny and sexism. Males weren't ready for the first female president. Well, it turns out a lot of women weren't ready for this to be their first female president.
No. Or maybe, and I got 15 seconds, so I maybe say this, or maybe the fact that she was female didn't matter nearly as much as what she stood for, which may be another point, just in terms of how people vote. Ladies, thank you very much. Appreciated both of you being here. Speaking of Gen Z, a lot of Gen Z is upset over Donald Trump, especially those at Harvard. They're supposed to be the breeding ground of America's next leaders. How the Crimson is dealing with Trump's victory, and how one other school is dealing with it, well, two other schools, a little differently. We'll show you that. See you in a minute. In a few days, reporters will write the autopsy stories to show why Kamala Harris lost. They did the same thing when Hillary Clinton lost in 2016. We'll write about those autopsy stories and the similarities between 2016 and 2024 tomorrow in War Notes. There is some wild deja vu. Warnotes.com to subscribe for free. Also see you on social media at Leland Vittert. We spent a lot of time over this show yesterday, even on election night, about how politicians on both sides are dealing with Trump's victory. But we've not really spent much time on how you, the voters, and our viewers are reacting. You guys matter. You spoke. That was what this election was about. So we'll start in West Palm Beach, Florida, where Trump supporters broke out in hymn.
Let's go!
As you can see, that was the Virginia Military Institute. The time, at least in the upper right-hand corner, is 1:48 a.m. If they had been watching NewsNation, they would have known a half an hour earlier. Something to keep in mind in terms of how you choose your viewing and where you choose to trust. One note, that roar, most of the people at VMI signed up because they will end up going into the U.S. military. They were roaring in approval of who will be their commander-in-chief, who will decide whether or not to send them into battle. Not everyone, though, on college campuses was thrilled about a second Trump term. Several colleges and universities have canceled classes, including Barnard, Columbia, and even Harvard. Professors expressed outrage that classes were not called off at the exact same universities. And this is something to note after the October 7th attacks. Tomorrow night, a special look at why the people that Kamala Harris trusted the most to get her elected did not work. Has America lost faith in its politicians or its celebrities?